what we had heard, my wife and I, on the 6th, we have friends in East Palestine, and there was the media, the corporations, Norfolk Southern, and the Ohio authorities working with them, and the media working with them, they carrying the lie about the one container, that was what it was all based upon, was actually one container they said was volatile, that they said, there was a chance that it could explode and send shrapnel out a mile, and they said, oh, that toxic smoke, this is what they said. That was what the premise was for the the criminal Governor DeWine to declare a state of emergency. That was a false state of emergency. So we were asking friends in East Palestine what's going on, what they were hearing, because we could not, you can't follow what's happening on the news, because it's total. It was totally carrying the narratives of those corporations. They were being directed, whatever it was that they said, because they never even mentioned, if you remember, you never heard any of those reports ever mention Pennsylvania, Beaver County, Lawrence County, because that they wanted that kept out of people's minds. They were positioning solely East Palestine, where never a wind was recorded from the Pennsylvania border where the derailment occurred. There was never any of that contamination from the 34 railroad containers that were carrying hazardous materials that they illegally burned off there on the Pennsylvania border. There's not one shred of evidence that there was ever a wind that blew west into East Palestine. It all went into Pennsylvania, but we were listening. It's like, what's going on? And then someone got word to us, like they were talking about. They said they were now. It went from letting pressure off of a container to they heard that they were going to do a burn off of. We didn't know how much they were going to do, what they were going to do, but we heard that. So that was we had a heads up. But what? We didn't know. It's like, was it or was it not? It was questionable what was going to happen, because no one said anything about, any burn off of containers. So when I walked outside at 6 p.m. on the 6th of February 2023, and I captured that timestamp cellular video, the 3 different videos, that I uploaded immediately onto Twitter, it's like I had measured what was said by folks we know in East Palestine, but there was nothing ever said officially about anything. So that's why I said, during the recording, that's the burn off from, what was, I mentioned East Palestine. I should, if I would have known that they were going to position the whole thing, in East Palestine and do a blackout, as far as not saying anything about Pennsylvania intentionally, they did that. I mean, intentionally, no one was given any warning. And, I did capture the media, WTAE, Channel 4, Action News. They were sitting there, a news crew, while I was recording massive chemical clouds that were literally dragging on the ground. Literally, in my videos, you can see them crawling along. That's how heavy they were with that contamination. So, the area got coated, by that. It was a fallout. It was a real fallout. And no one was warned. So they were, and it was all intentional. And that's what we have to remember now. What I'm telling you, I know it's an evil fact, but it was done intentionally. The people were not warned, because those multi-billion-dollar corporations didn't want to have to face the money and the potential. I mean, at that time, they were probably thinking, like, shit, like this could be like another Bhopal. They were afraid there were gonna be fatalities. So when they realized what they had done, of course, when they went ahead and lit that all on fire over there, they weren't thinking it was going to drag on the ground through Pennsylvania. They were thinking it was going to bust up through so many feet up into the atmosphere and dissipate. That's what they were thinking. And Sil Sagano went on Channel 27 Youngstown the night before they did that, and he warned them. He warned everyone. He said, look, these chemicals, they have a properties by which they attract water molecules. They attract that moisture in the altitude, however high they go, and they're going to come down. He said that. He said they're going to get heavy, like water droplets. The misting. They got heavy is what I'm saying. That's why it's so. When you see the videos I captured with them dragging on the ground, that's what it is. That's what happened. They literally fell out. There was literally a fallout of those carcinogenic industrial chemicals. And whatever was left of those 34 containers that were carrying hazardous materials. And when I say that, I'm not pulling that out of my butt. That's what you can see, with the drone footage. That's what you can read with the Associated Press, what they reported that the Norfolk Southern had told them the day after the derailment. They said there were 14 tankers of vinyl chloride that were involved, and there were 20 containers that were labeled as carrying hazardous materials. You can count the containers. There may have been more than 34. I mean, when you're watching the drone footage, slow it down, count them. I count at least 34. But yes, all true.